Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our time of reflection together. I'm glad that you're joining with me. We'll continue with our study and looking at kitchen table wisdom. Today, we'll be looking at the story called Grace. So, stay with me as we read through the story and then have a chance to reflect together. Grace. My patient, a physician who has cancer, comes to his session enormously pleased with himself. Knowing my love of stories, he says that he has found a perfect story and tells me the following parable. Shiva and Shakti, the divine couple in Hinduism, are in their heavenly abode watching over the earth. They are touched by the challenges of human life, the complexity of human reactions, and the ever-present place of suffering in the human experience. As they watch, Shakti spies a miserably poor man walking down a road. His clothes are shabby, and his sandals are tied together with rope. Her heart is wrung with compassion. Touched by his goodness and his struggle, Shakti turns to her divine husband and begs him to give this man some gold. Shiva looks at the man for a long moment. My dearest wife, he says, I cannot do that. Shakti is astounded. Why? What do you mean, husband? You are Lord of the universe. Why can't you do this simple thing? I cannot give this to him because he is not yet ready to receive it. Shiva replies. Shakti becomes angry. Do you mean to say that you cannot drop a bag of gold in his path? Surely I can, Shiva replies, but that is quite another thing. Please, husband, says Shakti. And so Shiva drops a bag of gold in the man's path. The man, meanwhile, walks along thinking to himself, I wonder if I will find dinner tonight, or shall I go hungry again? Turning a bend in the road, he sees something on the path in his way. Aha, he says, look there, a large rock. How fortunate that I have seen it. I might have torn these poor sandals of mine even further. And carefully, stepping over the bag of gold, he goes on his way. It seems that life drops many bags of gold in our path. Rarely do they look like what they are. I ask my patient if life has ever dropped him a bag of gold that he has recognized and used to enrich his life. He smiles at me. Cancer, he says simply. I thought you'd guess. So this week we learn about a story within a story. Dr. Remen is very fond of stories, as she says, and this is a story that a patient of hers brings to her, a story that he was reflecting on. This story comes from the Hindu tradition, which many of us, I would say myself included, probably are not familiar with too well. But I think it is a story that, no matter what the tradition or the background, provides each of us with a message from wherever we are to wherever we are. And so as the story went that we just read, it's a conversation between Shiva and Shakti, the two kind of male and female representations of God, and they're having a conversation together, these two kind of divine powers, and Shakti is moved by the plight of this poor man, and begs Shiva to drop a sack of gold to him so that that can provide him with some support. And Shiva says that this person is not ready yet. As the word said, not yet ready to receive it. And so he follows Shakti's desires, drops that sack of gold, but the poor person doesn't think of it as a sack of gold, sees it as potentially a rock that's gonna mess up his shoe or stub his toe, so he steps over it, and he says, "Thank God that I stood over it." It's a wonderful message. I think these moments where we are not yet ready to receive something in our lives that perhaps God or fate, so to speak, kind of puts in front of us. I think what's important about this story and the way that we think about it as it relates to our own lives is this is something that we can only come to on our own for ourselves. I think this, in some ways, could be very problematic or dangerous if we tell this to someone else. We say, you should have seen that pot of gold on the way. And when the person themselves would say, I didn't see a pot of gold. All I saw was a rock that I needed to step over and make sure I didn't trip over. But I think this can be very valuable to individuals themselves. For each of us, as we go through our own lives and our own stories, we will realize that what we thought of as a rock on the way or a stone or something that was a hindrance actually, in and of itself, was a moment of blessing for us. So I'll ask you to reflect for a moment if there is a time in your life where you realize, perhaps not even in the moment, but afterwards, that the hindrance or the thing that you felt was pulling you down or diverting you from the path actually, in and of itself, was something that could be of blessing. I know for this individual who was telling the story to Dr. Remen, it was cancer. It was their cancer diagnosis, which, again, I can only take their truth, this person's truth, and tell me that it was a blessing. I can only imagine the hardships that someone would feel with that type of diagnosis and going through all that type of suffering. But for this individual, that particular that cancer actually ended up being a source of blessing for them. So I ask you again, is there that moment where the struggle ended up being a blessing? Okay, well, give it some time to think. Let it settle in, and I'll be curious to hear about what you've thought about, and look forward to seeing you soon. Have a great day.